my clock so I can see. Thanks for thank you for being here, Nkazi, and for doing this. So we met with our mutual friend Kathy McGill last year shooting that Root Summer Leadership video.
Yes.
And I was just so fascinated with, your story, what little bit I got then. It was only for a couple minutes. So please just tell me about yourself. Tell me about your life.
Okay, so I was born in a rural village in the Eastern Cape, a district called Tsolo, that is in South Africa, one of the most poorest regions in South Africa. So I grew up in a rural area. Actually, I grew up like normal children, not even knowing that, we're poor or anything, because we as a village, like the villages, nobody ever went hungry, because if you don't have any food, you go next door, and actually you go next door and say, I'm coming to borrow sugar, knowing that you're not going to bring it back.
You're right.
So, but then that's how it is. And actually, I grew up not knowing who my mother was. I was growing up in a rural village with my auntie, and I thought she was my mother. So until I was about 6 years old, when I knew that, my mother was working in Umtata, working for the white South Africans in a hotel. And then from that village, I was moved to where my mother was working in Umtata. And I stayed there for maybe 2 years, and then we were moved to another location. I guess my I'm so sorry. My mom got a boyfriend, and so they drove us by night, and so I woke up in another village. And it was like where my mother was like a township, but where I was a rural area again. And so that is where I stayed and did my primary and secondary education. And we left that region in 1963 when I was 13 years old to go to another location where my mother found a job as a cook. That was in 1960, 61, 62. So I was very, very intelligent in school, so that when I got to this new place, it's called Mount Freya, my mother got a job as a cook to cook for students. It was a boarding academy. And so when I got there, even though we were taught in our native language, which is Xhosa, Xhosa, and then I had to transition to kind of like secondary school and learn things in English, which was very difficult because we never taught in school. We taught all languages, like subjects were in Xhosa, which is my native tongue. And so I found that it was kind of like challenging, but I was an intelligent girl, I was told, and I knew that. But then because my mother did not have money to send me to a college, because she wanted me to go to a college that's owned by our church, which is Seventh-day Adventist Church, but I didn't have the money, so I stayed with my mother at that school. I tried to do correspondence, like study online, not necessarily online, study, read books and then write exams with another college in Johannesburg called Damelin Institute. Because I did not know English very well, for the first time I dropped that class. I said, no, I cannot do it, because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to finish it because I didn't have the English. I couldn't study in English, although I was like number one in my classes all the time. But now the challenge was learning English, learning a subject in English. So I stayed for 1 year, and then 64, 65, I went to this private college I wanted to go to. Someone sponsored me for 4 years. So I was able to finish my education in Butterworth in a college called Bethel College. And that's interesting because this is where I just returned from. That's where my family is, Butterworth, South Africa.
You were just visiting there?
No, I went, this time we went to bury our son.
Okay.
He passed away 2 months ago.
Oh my gosh.
But the school there, it's a good college, and I went there and stayed 4 years. And then after that, I decided to go do nursing in another district, Umtata district, and I stayed there for 4 years. For some reason, I didn't do nursing after I graduated with nursing. I I work in a court as a clerk of the court, interpreter and typist. And so from 1976 to 1981, I worked in a court and as a clerk, interpreter in court from my native language closer to English and vice versa. So in 1981, because of the turmoil, like the apartheid regime, and because of the turmoil, my husband could not stay in South Africa because he was in the struggle as well. So I decided that let's go overseas and then I can pursue medicine. And then he was going to continue with his electronics engineering. So in 1981, we left for Andrews University in Michigan, USA. And so that's where I spent 7 years trying to get a degree. So what happened is, because I did not have enough money, I only had money just for 1 year. My husband did not know that he could not work because back home he worked as an electrician, but at Andrews at the USA cannot work because he did not apply as a student. And so for the first time, we struggled a lot because he had to go work in the farms, like agriculture, picking fruit and working very hard. But sometimes at the end of the 2-week period when they were supposed to be paid, the hirer, the employer would tell him, show me your papers, like show me your work permit and green card so you can see that you're legal to work here. My husband didn't have any of those papers. And so they would not pay him. After working 2 weeks, 40 hours each day, no pay. So actually he wanted to go back to South Africa, and I told him, I said, well, I don't think that's a good plan, because first of all, we sold everything we had, with a house, with a car back home, and now you're going to go start from scratch. And I said, we're already here. Let's just see how things go. So I went to school and got some scholarships. He worked very hard trying to help me so that I could finish my degree. I wanted to be a medical doctor, but because of that, we didn't have money. I had to work as a nurse full-time, go to school full-time. So my medicine, I dropped it. I just had to be content with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing, which is what I got in 1981 from Andrews University. Then from there, because it was very cold, snow, we're not used to snow, we moved to California, because my husband was going to do an electronics engineering degree, and I was just going to work and help him. When we got to California, we stayed there for 3 years and established a church with the Africans from all over the world who live in California. And so we formed an all nations African church. But in 1993, my husband was working in Oakland, and he was mugged in his hotel, and the people left him for dead. Fortunately, some people called 911, and they flew him to a hospital where he stayed for about a month recovering.
Okay, I gotta stop you there. This is like drinking from a fire hose. So I want to kind of go back and make sure I understood some of these things in context.
Uh-huh.
You were born in a poor part of South Africa.
Correct.
This is outside of like Johannesburg and that area.
Correct.
And it was your aunt that raised you till you were 6.
Yes.
But you thought that was your mother.
Yes.
And then what was it like when you were 6 years old and you discovered this wasn't your mother and somebody else was?
And actually, I did not know when I was 6 years old that she was not my mother. I later found out when my mother picked me up to go and stay with her where she was working in another district. So that's when I knew. Otherwise, I lived there as if she was my mother. I would go out with boys and just go find some roots and dig herbs, things to eat all day long. And then we come back home. We were full from eating outside. And actually, we were very stubborn, because we would milk people's goats and sheep, and then milk into some bottles and then put the milk there so that it can curdle. So we made our own buttermilk in the wilderness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, why were you raised by your aunt? Where was your mother? What happened there?
It is very common in South Africa for children to be raised by their relatives who are working elsewhere to make ends meet.
Gotcha.
And so it was, I didn't even have, when I first heard that she wasn't my mother, the one I was staying with, it didn't, I guess it must have bothered me a little bit, but I didn't dwell on it because I didn't see anything wrong with it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Just a different culture than what we're used to here in the United States, kind of a thing.
Yes.
Wow. So you would gather herbs all day and hanging out with friends and relatives?
With boys.
Boys?
Mostly boys. Yeah.
Were they nice to you?
Yeah, they were nice. We're like family coming from the same locality. Yeah.
So when you made that transition to living with your mom and being in that different area, was that the first time you'd seen like more urban environment with, were there cars? What was it like?
It was still rural.
Rural, okay.
We walked to school. We still went, I still went out with some boys there because I was the oldest at home, so I could do what I wanted to do. And then my sister and my little brother, they would stay at home. So it was rural. I didn't even see, I only saw a car if we left our locality to a city, which is maybe about, I'm sure driving about 6 hours from where we lived. And that's where I saw cars and I saw different buildings. And that's where my mother was working. Yes.
And what was she doing, working?
She was a maid, taking care of children and washing clothes and doing whatever her boss wanted her to do. Yeah.
And so then you get this opportunity for an education where you'll start to learn English. And was that spoken in South Africa and in parts of South Africa? Was English a common language at all, or was it more like this will help you get ahead, or why?
It was a second language.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, I'm not sure I'm going to say second. It was a language that we did not speak in our rural areas. So I would say it was a second language. But then there was another language that we had to learn, whether we liked it or not, the Afrikaans language. Afrikaans, so by the Boers, it's a Boer language, like Boer language.
Okay.
Yeah, the people who came to South Africa and then took over South Africa. So that was the language that we had to learn, that language, even if we liked it or not. So we learned English and then the Boer language, which is Afrikaans, and then our language as well, and other subjects.
Wow. So you were multilingual at a young age.
Yes, yes.
Wow. And so what did you think of learning English and talking to people in English? Was that eye-opening? What was it like for you?
Yeah, so all students learned English and our teachers. So when I managed to learn English, it was interesting. Of course, I was just working for high grades. I wasn't really, all I wanted to do was to get A's. All my life, that's all I did was getting A's. That's all I mattered to me. I did not know, I couldn't say it was, I liked it, I didn't like it. I just learned because I wanted to get a good grades and then go to university without having to pay money.
Wow. Okay, so I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to follow the thread you you laid out in that first string. So you enter your early teenage years, and then what happened from there? Into high school, and then remind me.
So I went to this different private school. It's in Butterworth, Eastern Cape, still in a rural area. So that's where I studied my secondary college. I guess we'd call that college.
Okay.
Yeah. And then from there, then I went to Untitled District where I studied nursing.
And how old were you when you started to study nursing?
I was 18 years.
18 years old.
Yes, yes.
Wow, just a kid.
Yeah, I was 18 years. And of course, I left my mom way back in that place, the first school where they were teaching, where I learned English for the first time. And that was in Mount Frey. And then Bethel College in Butterworth, which is where my family is. And then to Mthatha District, where I learned nursing.
And when did you meet your husband? When did all that come about?
So after, like in Mthatha, I was working at the magistrate court and typist, clerk, and interpreter. Then I moved to Butterworth, back to Butterworth, where I studied high school.
Okay.
So that's where my husband was an electrician there. So that's where we met.
Ah.
Yeah.
Was he a fixing the lights, or how'd you guys?
He was an electrician. I can't remember. Because he saw me in the magistrate court where I was an interpreter. Because people can come to the court and just listen, even if the case is not their family member. So he saw me there interpreting, and he thought that I was very fluent, I was very smart. And then, of course, around that time, that was 1979, we met each other and became boyfriend and girlfriend. So
he had to think you were cute too, right?
I think so, because later on he told me. He told me he likes beautiful girls. Yeah, so that's how we met. And actually, I think I was in a church. I was in a local church doing the presentation because I was coordinating some programs for the church. And he happened to have visited there, and I didn't know him. So he says that's where he saw me first and decided that he was going to pursue me.
So what's that like in that culture? Does he have to ask your father's permission? Does he just go after you, or is he talking to your friends like, "Hey, introduce me"? What was it like?
He goes straight. A young man goes straight to the young man, and it depends which area you are in, because we were kind of like in Butterworth was a small town, and that's where he had been for years, and that's where I have been for years. So he didn't ask the parents, but then when he knew that he was going to marry me, then he had to go get family members, tell them about me, and then they would, as a entourage, they will go to my home, and then they'll go ask that. They'll tell my parents that our son is interested in your daughter, so we're coming to ask if she can be married to our son. Of course, they have to pay lobola dowry. They have to pay dowry.
They had to pay your family?
The person who wants to marry a girl, the family has to bring cows, so many cows, depending on what, let's say, for instance, my family, on how much my family valued me, they will charge so many cows. If they didn't think very highly of you, they will be charged less money.
What were you worth?
I never asked. I never asked, because one of the things is that my husband didn't have cows, because it has to be cows. He didn't have cows. So if he had to have cows, he'd have to ask his family. So for him, he was asked to pay cash.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did not ask how much, but I know that he told me that he did not finish paying, because culturally you don't finish paying everything that you were asked, because the family that's taking you up allows the other side, my husband's side, not to pay everything, hoping that my husband, will take good care of me.
Interesting. So you could have said no, right? You could have said, I don't want to marry this guy.
The thing is that he would not have gone to my home without me saying, yes, I want to marry him.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow. So you get married, and then where do you go from there?
So I get married. I worked in another magistrate court, and I think we have had some dates. But then we decided that we have to get married quickly, and then we got married. The wedding happened in Butterworth.
And how old were you when you got married?
It was 1981. It must have been 30. Yeah, both of us were 30 years old.
Same age. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. So while in Butterworth, that's where we got married in 1981. And then, no, actually 1979.
1979.
And then 81, we moved to the United States.
Okay, so and you moved to the United States. What was the reason?
Because of the struggle,
apartheid,
the apartheid struggle, and because of the fact that my husband was involved, kind of like how can I say? He was one of the fighters, not like great men like Nelson Mandela or other men that were even arrested, but he was working with others underground.
So he was part of the resistance.
Correct. And so he was in danger, especially at that time. The apartheid process. I mean, there was so much upheaval in the country. It was so much death and people were killed. So he was afraid that maybe that might happen to him too.
My apartheid knowledge is pretty ignorant. But I think my basic understanding was it was like a white governing class that was enslaving and persecuting
Correct.
Black people.
Yes. So unlike here in the States, we called it apartheid. It was legalized racism.
Legalized racism.
Yeah, so they did anything they wanted to do with Black people, and that's why we lived in the Eastern Cape. Those other people were thrown into other poorest regions. That's why there is an Eastern Cape. It was because of that regime, because they wanted to get all the fertile land and everything that's good for them, and then we had to fend for ourselves. To this date, it's still, even though it's our people that are ruling now, Eastern Cape people have not recovered.
So still the same
same
racism exists over there,
I won't say racism. I mean, nobody knows. If you're racist, sometimes nobody knows that you're racist. But there are people who decided to stay in South Africa after the apartheid regime was toppled. So they stayed there. But whites and Black people, they work together, they mingle. But like in our region, our municipality is Black people, and mostly everything is Black. There's very few white owned stores, because most white people left the country. But what happens is that there's a lot of corruption, unfortunately, by our own people. So that doesn't make things very easy.
No.
Yeah, because
So you flee to the U.S. What was that like coming to the United States? Was that easy? Was it difficult?
So first of all, to come to the United States, you have, if you say you're going to school, you have to have enough money at least for 1 year. And then you are given a student visa. So my husband, being an electrician at home, he just wanted to come with me. He wasn't coming. He didn't know that he could not work. So for him, I came as an F1 student, F1 visa, which means I could work 20 hours a week in school. My husband came with an F2. He was my dependent. So that means that I had to take care of him. He should not work because he didn't come as a student. Or he wasn't sponsored by an American to come and live as a permanent resident. So that's how. So even when we got to the customs, when you come to America, then you have to go to immigration office, customs. That's where they check everything to make sure that you are getting in here legally. So when they were checking mine, I was okay, because in my paper from school, it said that I have enough money for 1 year. And then my husband, when they asked my husband, because he had an F2 visa that doesn't allow him to work, they said, so how are you going to survive? He made a mistake. He did not know. He says, I'm going to work. So right there, he could have been turned back.
Oh,
so no. Yes, I prayed while they were interrogating him. And I said, please, Lord. And eventually, they sent him to an African American to interview him. But I was praying, and then fortunately, the white man was working with this African American. They said, okay, we are not satisfied with how you're entering the United States, but we'll let you in.
Whoa, close call.
Yes, so we said angels must have been around there. Because for me, I'm a Christian, but at that time I didn't know what to do except to memorize, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
Yeah.
Even if I said it over and over, because I said, we're in trouble. I knew we're in trouble.
Yeah.
And then this man said, no, we're not satisfied, but we're going to let you in. So that was the first, almost an obstacle that would have sent us back home.
Wow.
Yeah. Because coming as an immigrant, it's different. You sometimes say, who's going to go in? I'm an immigrant. I go, my husband doesn't go because of the visa type.
Right. Did you know anybody here already?
The people that we know, maybe we had met them. No, we did not know many people in America, in Michigan. But we had talked to people that were at the school in Michigan about how the things work. But they didn't tell us that, hey, you need to have, your visa should be this kind of visa. because they were sponsored, so they didn't really know all these intricacies or obstacles that one meets at the border.
What were your impressions when you got to the United States and you got inside and traveled and saw states and Michigan, and what did you think about it? What was your impression?
To tell you the truth, even though I was raised in a rural area, when I came to America, the first thing that shocked me is to know that, like for instance, we come in a house, right, an apartment, and then for instance, back home, even though we were poor, I mean, when I was working anyway, we had like wardrobes where you kept your clothes, and so I looked for that to see where am I going to keep my clothes.
Right.
But then you have to. So I saw, what is it called? Closet. They have a closet. But then another thing that shocked me was to find that there were homeless people. That one, homeless people. I said, what? Homeless people in America? That one I could not believe. That one just set me back. I said, oh no, what are we coming to? And we could have been homeless too, even though we're in school, because we didn't have enough money beyond 1 year. But because I worked as a nurse and my husband worked wherever he worked, when they paid him, at least we had some money. I don't think we could have been homeless. But homelessness struck me. I really didn't know that. America had like something like that. And then I found, I think at some point we drove to New York and we saw all these people in the streets. I said, my goodness, this doesn't even happen where we come from. We never saw that street people, like homeless people in the streets, and so chaotic, kind of like chaotic. So that was my impression. I was impressed by the school because the school, even though I didn't have money, they let me continue with my classes, knowing that I'm working, and then sometimes they'll find someone who can help me with my tuition. So I managed, and then I worked. So I managed to get my Bachelor of Science in Nursing without much problem, maybe with a little problem, because I never got used to work that hard. When I was, after I got my education, I was a secretary, I was a clerk, and here I'm cleaning toilets in America.
Right.
I said, well, I had to, because that's the only job I could do as a student. So, and my husband worked in a farm. Of course, it was not anybody's fault that we didn't have a correct visa.
Right.
But then I didn't like the fact that these people make him work 40 hours a week, and then when he has to be paid, they don't pay him. They say, show us your papers. So that I didn't like, the way they treated people like my husband.
Yeah. So, you go to nursing school. How long did that take for you to get your degree in nursing?
So I don't know if I told you that I wanted to become a doctor.
No.
So the reason I came, because of the poor infrastructure of the hospitals back home, and because of that, I saw some people were coming from overseas, not treating our people well, or not really like spending much time with them, or we're not getting high quality care. So I said, well, maybe let me go overseas, and then I'll do my medicine, and then I'll come back. And of course, we were going to come back and then work on improving whatever I could. You cannot change the whole system, at least wherever you are, at least in that hospital where I saw all these problems, then that's where I would go back and work, try to make a difference. So that's why I wanted to become a doctor. But then it took me 7 years because I was going to school full time and had no money, so I had to have money to pay my tuition. Yeah, and so that's the reason why I got nursing after degree, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, after 7 years.
7 years, wow.
I could have got the doctor's degree, right? Yeah, so 7 years. But I had to do that because that was the only way I could make it in school.
So that would have been 1988 that you were done with that then?
Correct, yes.
And then what happens next? Did you want to go back? Did you decide to stay? Well, you're here, so...
So we're here. My husband wanted to do electronics engineering, and we just decided to stay.
What was he able to do with his visa situation? How did he...
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So when we registered at school, they will write down your status, right? And so they wrote my status. They knew my husband's status at school, and then they knew mine. But for some reason, my husband they reported my husband to immigration. Yes, and the way we knew that is because one day we were at home and we saw this van parked outside, and then people came in with a typewriter that they sat, and so they asked my husband to show them his card, work permit, because they discovered that, however they check us, that he was in the country illegally. They did not know that my husband had already qualified under the Reagan immigration policy to be a permanent resident. And so my husband says, I can show you. He says, they say, wow, our immigration officer, they told us that you are illegal and we were coming to take you and your family back home. And he said, I know. I say, you guys are lying. He said, you are lying. He said, if you say that I'm illegal here, then your immigration officer, wherever you're coming from, people are liars there, because I have my green card. No, not green card, a work permit, because he was applying for a permanent residence. So that's the only way, and then he showed them. That's the only way they looked dumb, because my husband had a work permit and they were coming to deport us so that we can go back home. So that one was really hurtful, but we said, well, this is America, it's not our country. Things are going to happen and we just have to accept and move on.
But so President Reagan had initiated some kind of law or some policy that said if you're here working, you have resident status now?
Correct. They'll give, you have to apply for it and then you'll get a resident status.
And your husband had applied for it? And
correct.
So he was, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So what was their response? What did they say to you?
They were shocked. They were telling my husband, you're lying. He says, well, okay.
What?
Then your office says, well, your office employees or some of your office is a fraud. Then if you say, when I have a paper here and you say I'm lying, then your office is fraud.
So did they?
No, they left. They left him because they were here at a card.
Wow.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I was okay because I had my student visa still. Yeah, so yeah, that one was very, very troubling because we did not know that would happen. We never dreamed that anything like that would happen, especially when you know that you already have your green card.
Wow. So. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So the reason we found out that they got that information from the school I was attending. Somebody knew that my husband was here illegally, and they did not know that he had gone through the President Reagan's permanent resident program. So they came because they had got something from the school, and then they did not verify it before they came, and now they left without my husband and my family.
What is wrong with people?
And that was in the early 80s, Yeah. Yeah.
That's frustrating to hear that people go back to where you came from. I mean, that's just such a dumb.
Yeah. Well, that happens a lot. When you hear about immigrants and all these people that come here, not everybody comes to the state illegally. Some are like my husband. Some people know that they are coming illegally. Some people just don't know the legal system here or the immigration system. Just like my husband did not know, he came and thought he was a legal person because he had a visa. He didn't know that his visa did not allow him to work.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I'll avoid going on a rant about that, but it's irritating that there's so many obstacles for people wanting to go anywhere.
Yes.
So you're in Michigan still, 1988.
Yes.
You're graduated from nursing finally.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, are you going to keep going on and be a doctor?
Right now, I had changed because I thought, oh, man, if I'm getting old already. And it's taken me 7 years to finish a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And medicine is not easy. I'll have to maybe go another 4 years, maybe. And then I said, no, I'm just going to start working. So that because we have children now, we have to raise kids. And then we're not going to go back to South Africa. That's what we had decided at that moment. And then knowing that maybe at some point we'll be able to go back home. But we haven't gone back. We're still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now you're in New Mexico. How'd you get here? What was the...
Okay, so the reason, I think earlier I was saying that my husband was going to school in California, and he also worked. So he was in Oakland doing a contractor's job. Apparently there were people who were watching him as he went in and out of the hotel. So the people came in and they mugged him and they beat him and they tied him his hands to the back, and then they left. They took his car and everything, all his instruments for electricity. And then luckily there were women that were passing by my husband's motel room, and the door was open, and they saw him that he was bleeding, and they called 911. So they took him in a helicopter to the hospital because he was messed up. They messed him up. Yeah, his one eye had popped out. I mean, they were killing him, and they thought he would die. So my husband, after that, he was healing, and then he says, "No, I'm not staying here." He was afraid to stay in California, not knowing, I think in his mind it was like, maybe they're following him, maybe they don't know where he stays. So he said no. He was very traumatized, and then he said, "No, I'm not going to stay here." So he went to work in Nevada, and then from there to New Mexico, to Albuquerque. That was 1994 when he came to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And so
you were together the whole time traveling. You were in California with him, and
yeah, I moved here after 1 year and joined him.
Okay.
Because what happened to me also is in 1993, I was working as a nurse and then I fell. And so from that, I could not work for 4 years. So he was not working, I was not working, after he was mugged. So he had to come to get a job. And he got a job in Albuquerque as an electrician in one of the industries here. Then I followed in 1995 with the children. And then we've been here since 1995. Oh.
Wow, 1 year longer than me. I got here in 96.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've been here for a long time. And I got a nursing job at UNM Hospital. And I worked there for 3 years. So in between that time, before I got the job in a nursing job, because my work permit got messed up, my application for permanent resident got messed up. No, immigration didn't know what's going on. So one day, after 2 years working at UNM Hospital, I went to renew my work permit. When I got there, they said, "No, your file has been closed long time ago. You are here illegally now."
What?
So then I did not return to work the next day because I could have chosen, because the hospital didn't know that my working permit and therefore my stay here is illegal. But I decided I'm not going to go back. I don't want to jeopardize my stay here. So from 2005, I was illegal. And I decided that I wasn't going to just, because like when you have no papers, then you're always, if you get stopped, there's a chance the police are going to ask you about your status. That's what they do most of the time. They ask you about your immigration status, unfortunately. And then if you are not in good standing, then they lock you. You are locked in jail. And then if you have an attorney, he can help you talk to the court officials. But for me, I said, well, I'm not going to sit at home, because then I would have to sit at home, close myself inside, close curtains, so that if by any chance somebody comes looking for me, because they probably know that I'm illegal here, I would be sent home. So I decided, well, I'm not going to sit here. I'm going to volunteer with an agency that was welcoming refugees and some immigrants, mostly refugees. That was in 2007. I decided to volunteer for that organization. Help people when they first come and help them access resources, and formed a school for teaching English, and then worked in partnership with CNM College to make sure that immigrants and refugees, no matter where they came from, they could get some extra help with English.
Yeah.
And then they needed that English to be able to get like food stamps, because if you don't take English or look for jobs, then your status is not good, because you're not going to get money. You're not going to be able to stay and survive here. So
are you a citizen now?
I am. Okay, I am I don't even know how to call myself, but I have a green card, which is called a permanent resident card.
Okay.
So for me, the next step, and the thing is that I did that for all those years, 2006 to 2018. So I was still illegal, right? I could have been sent home anytime, and I was lucky I wasn't. So between that time, 2018, then I got an attorney who helped me to apply for a permanent residence. And then also, I'm not going to blame it on America. Also, my government was not helping me to get my ID, correct my ID from home, because I needed that corrected. So I waited a long time also waiting for that. I can't blame the fact that I was illegal, but also my government did not process my papers correctly, because after they were processed, then I was able to apply for permanent residence in 2018. And then after that, I decided to go back to school to CNM to do a refresher course in nursing, so that I can go back to nursing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think I don't know how old I was already in the 60s when I did that, 2018, yeah. Because I'm 72 now, so I must have been around 69, 68 when I returned to CNM. And I passed so well, A's, all A's, clinicals and theory. I was impressed, and I went back to the hospital that I had left when my work permit expired.
So 72 years old, and you're going back to school to work some more in nursing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm 72 years now. That was in 2018 when I went back to school.
Okay.
Yeah, so I may have been 69
68,
or
69.
somewhere. Yeah, I said, well, I'm just going to go back to school. And I did that also because I wanted to show, like we have all these young people here, even my African community, where all have these people are struggling to know English and then struggling to get a job. I said, well, if they can see me, and I'm working with them, right, helping them, if they can see me, they call me Mama Nkazi. If they can see me going to school at my age, that will motivate them, hopefully, to strive, even though they are struggling, with the English language.
They call you Mama Nkazi?
Mama Nkazi. That's how people know. People know me here. Some people know. Yeah.
So I'm curious. You worked a long time. Were you able to get Social Security saved up? I mean, do you have a Social Security number? Like, what's going to happen to you?
Okay. So for me, let's talk about my husband first. The one who was nearly sent home. He I think maybe 68 or 67. I can't remember whatever that year was. But for him, he got a citizenship.
Okay.
For me, I applied for the green card in 1968, which means I became legal in 1968. And so, I have now, I'm going to be applying for citizenship soon. But I do not have, what is this? Yeah, so I don't have I don't get Social Security yet. I'm now going to apply. It seems like you have to be a citizenship. I think I was reading that before you apply for Social Security.
Interesting.
Yeah. So my husband is a citizen. He gets Social Security. I'm a permanent resident. I don't get Social Security.
But are they going to retroactively look at all those years you worked and say, well, you were paying your taxes?
Okay. So every year I receive a statement from the government showing how much money I saved when I did work.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there is some money that is ready for me to apply and claim.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because I already worked. I already worked before.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That is so wild. So tell me what you think about your background's fascinating. I can't even imagine just the things you've seen and, your many experiences. But what do you think of just modern life and the culture and where things are going now? What are your overall impressions of the state of the world? Yeah,
right now, okay. I know my country has a problem with corruption. And then so that's setting other
Mine
people.
too. Ours too. Sorry.
Yes, yeah. I'm here now.
Yeah, you're in the thick
There's
of it
a
with
lot
me.
of corruption, and I pray that one day somehow that will go, because the people are struggling. Like, for instance, I learned that in 2019 I went to visit the son who passed away. I stayed with him in 2019 at home in South Africa, right? And that's where I experienced, and I saw it with my eyes, because I was like, my sister has a car, so I was staying with my sister for 1 year. I stayed there, and then I noticed that when there was a time when we had no water, like let's say from June to August, we opened taps were dry, and then from August to January, the time I left, there were still issues with water, and I saw what was happening. I saw how, and because I also asked the Americans here to help me, because I was doing a fundraiser to help those people who had no water, and then also I also trained some young people to sew, trying to help them make sure they can do something to earn some money. So that's when I saw corruption in my country, because there was a lake that they were supposed to have. Is it a lake? A lake where they get the water. When it rains, keeps the water.
Oh, wow.
Dam, whatever you call it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I saw it how the money. I mean, people they're using people's government's money. I would see they say, "Oh yeah, we're going to work on this," and then I used to keep going there to see if they are really like they were supposed to remove some silt or something from the dam,
right?
So that when it will rain, the water will have a place to stay. So I would see some trucks there. I see like people like they're working, they're pretending to be working. Then you come back there maybe a few days after they're gone, and then you don't have water, nothing. So I saw that one with that's the only one thing that really makes me know that corruption exists, besides reading about it. And so that's what I saw. And so right now, I don't know if South Africa is going to get a non-corrupt people in the government. I'm praying. And I see it here in America, but Americans have, are better off than South Africans, because they can work, work is easy to find, and even the pay is not as bad as we think it is. But some people like my country that I experienced, they're not making it, especially with COVID. COVID monies have been sent to our region to help out people use the money for their own business and own selves. So that's a plight of South Africa right now. And in America, there is corruption, but unlike what I've seen in my country. That's a killer. So sometimes we say, okay, so which period was better? Were we better during apartheid, or are we better now with corruption? So those are questions I ask, and those are questions some other people are asking. But then you're not going to answer those questions. I don't know. That's what I can say. I don't know. So corruption that's one that sets people back.
When you think about the future, you have a awesome granddaughter, Nkazi. Also,
yeah.
She's very articulate and bright.
Yes.
Really enjoyed getting to interview her. Are you hopeful for her future? And when you look at what the state of the world is, do you think things are going to be better for her?
Oh yeah, that's one thing you asked about the state of the world. I don't know how. Corruption, I think corruption is everywhere. That I think people who are really hungry for money, that's what is killing us. Besides crime, and just because people are greedy. If we didn't have greedy people, my granddaughter, I would say my granddaughter has hope. There's hope for her if she stays in school and study well, so that she can be in higher positions. If she doesn't get educated, she will depend on food stamps and the money that the government gives. However, that system changed, because it used to be that people like, let's say, for instance, refugees, immigrants, asylum seekers, and local people who are not doing well, they used to get money just for free, right? But these days, like for instance, in my center, we have people who come from human service, were sent by human services to come and work so many hours a week so they can get their stipend and food stamps. So it's really difficult now. You almost have to have education, because if you don't, it's not like you're going to get some money free. Now you have to work for it, except for during the COVID pandemic, where there were stimulus checks and things like that. With that COVID stimulus checks gone, they're back to having to work for that money.
So tell me about your center. What's the name of it?
My son.
Your center.
Sorry, our center is, there's two names. So I started forming with the Africans and Asian women way back like in 2009, when I saw that they were not getting jobs. So I learned sewing, and then among ourselves, women from Asia, Africa, we formed a group called New Mexico Women's Global Pathways.
New Mexico Women's Global Pathways.
Yes, and then with help of the La Mesa Presbyterian Church, it was incorporated 2011, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so the La Mesa was a fiscal aid sponsor for New Mexico Women's Global Pathways. And so my husband and I helped me and the women, Asian women and African women, to develop that. But then in 2014, somehow, because our work had extended, our work was expanded. So among Africans and among other community members, we formed Immigrant and Refugee Resource Village of Albuquerque. Because my husband helps with Global Pathways, and he helps with we call it IRRVA, Immigrant and Refugee Resource Village of Albuquerque. So we kind of like have New Mexico Women's Global Pathways as a educational educational economic development program of the IRRVA, of the Immigrant and Refugee Resource Village of Albuquerque. So I am kind of like a volunteer. I don't get paid. I get paid when we have money, when we have applied and received money. So right now, that is what I am doing, working to train women, girls, and their families in sewing, beading, English as a second language. Then we added gardening since last year, and then we'll continue as I'm waiting for some funding. As we get funds, then we'll continue, because the funds are used to pay stipends to the program participants, especially the gardening and the ones who are doing sewing. So right now, we're always looking for money. And there's so many organizations here that we collaborate with, maybe about 15 or so. And all of us are working with for the same communities, right? Except that we really don't work much with the Latin American. We're open to serve all, but we haven't really. We worked with them, I think, in 2019, and then for a little bit, and then I went home, and then the people who were left to manage the work, we didn't reach out. They didn't reach out to them, but we're open. We're now going to restructure so that we can collaborate with other organizations more. Presently, we collaborate with about 12 organizations serving almost the same people, right? But there's a lot of organizations doing the work for refugees, immigrants.
Are there a lot of refugees that come here from?
Okay, so between the time I started in 2007, there were, I would say lots, but there were between 2007 and 2018, before the pandemic. There were sizable amount of refugees coming in from Asia, Africa, Latin America, and so forth. But once what is this thing that just happened? The COVID, the pandemic arrived. Then there were very, very few numbers of people coming. But now, because there's COVID, after the president, the new president came in, they are starting to bring more refugees. So there will be, I think there are going to be more and more refugees coming. And of course, with the Afghanistan situation, you already noticed that, there's a lot of people that came from there. And we have some of them here being resettled, but I haven't really worked with them yet. Yeah. The new ones, from Afghanistan. But we have a lot of Africans that have already arrived post-pandemic.
I met a gentleman the other day that was an immigrant from Africa. He was trying to explain, I can't remember what part of the continent he was from, but where he was from, he made it sound like there was a class system, like there were 3 sort of hierarchies. Was it like that where you were, or was it like everybody was pretty much on the same level and it was just the apartheid situation and that was it?
No, within our communities, there was classification of people according to whether are you educated or not educated. Do you have a job or you don't have a job? They still have classes, but I think that the situation, especially where in Butterworth, where my family is, where we buried our son, it's like that thing is less. They are concentrating on being poor and they are together against the people who are in power, who are using their monies not the way they're supposed to use them.
You mentioned your son. I'm very sorry. What happened to your son?
So he had been sick since 2009. So our son was here with us, and he went back, and I can't remember, but he was home when he passed away. He had been staying at home, in South Africa for a long time, but he was sick since 2009. He had a collapsed lung, and he was a miracle. Every time we hear that he's taken to the hospital, we always say, "Oh, please pray for him," because we thought he's going to go, But since 2006, he has been sick, really sick, and very strong young adult. But the body gave up, and so in January, so we had to take a quick trip because in my family we're not a huge family, and then the adults have passed on, so his young adults were home. So we decided to take a fast trip back home to be able to help to bury him. So we just came back 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
And kind of in closing this up, I want to ask, I guess, let me see if I can figure out what I want to ask and how I want to ask it. Your background is really interesting, and you've had a lot of difficulty, and you live in a society where you still have difficulty sometimes because of the color of your skin, maybe even because of your age and the fact that you're not a wealthy person or whatever.
Yes.
But what could you communicate to someone like me about or imagine I represent a lot of humanity that is just ignorant. What can you tell me about, from your point of view of life, that would make me a better person?
So I'll give an example of what my husband and I did, because we did. First of all, we sing, also sing. So we used to sing here in California, and I remember that my husband and I got a community members to help us to raise funds during the Rwanda genocide. We raised funds and brought one young adult to America. So the reason I worked with the refugees, first of all, because I'm not a refugee, and I came from South Africa. So I had never interacted with people from other African countries. I knew about them. We went to school with them wherever we were. But my husband and I said, okay, let us see if we can help this family and know who they are, because we're not refugees or immigrants, but who have struggled a lot. So let's see if we can assist based on the way that we struggled and were helped. So that's how we started to help the refugees. We didn't help them because we were asked to. No, we said, no, let's help them. And then we said, okay, we're not going to help only Africans. We're going to help Asians and any refugees, immigrant coming from other parts of the country. Because the experience that we had in South Africa and the racism that really put populations like black and white and wherever you are separate. I said, I don't want to live that life again. So that's how my husband and I started reaching out. So my thing for anyone in this community, anybody wants to know about other people, is to reach out, call out maybe the African American community and say, oh, how can I help? Or call other organizations and say, how can I help? Or when there's events, like we used to do village feasts, but we stopped because of the pandemic. Like everybody come together to welcome newly arriving families from the community. They'll cook food and bring. So we sing, dance, and tell stories. And so then when people come, let's say people from America who don't know refugees, they come and they learn about people. And then maybe they'll take a phone number or join our organization to see how can we help these people. So I think finding ways to reach out and then learn for yourself about the people that, even about the African Americans who are here. Even myself, I need to, right enough, I work with some of the African American community, because there's African and there's African American community, and we're both black, but we have distinct characterization. We're different. So I have to make an effort to reach out to the African American community and be part of that community. And then they are also African Americans. I see that they are trying to reach out to African community, because we cannot live in silos. And then when something happens, for instance, something happened to a black person, then we're all African Americans, we stand up now, we're black, right? So we have to be black all of us were black, but we have to find ways to be intentionally black, like help each other and know each other. So for me, also, I haven't been reaching out lately. And I don't know it's because of the pandemic, but the African Americans, some of them, people try, even during the pandemic, African Americans would bring food for us to get to the community. And then we started working with the Latin American population during the pandemic, because some organizations were reaching out to our organization to see if we could sew masks for the community. So I don't like the pandemic, but the pandemic did something that nobody could do to help us as humans unite. So for me, I don't want to pray for the pandemic to continue, no. But we gained some. I was able to reach out to find. Now I have colleagues now who are helping and want to help in our organization from the Spanish community. The African Americans are also starting to work together with our organization. So the other people, I don't like to characterize people, but if you're like non-African or non-refugee and you want to really understand, it's not an easy process. It's not even easy for me sometimes to say, to reach out to an Anglo or somebody who's American and not black. It's not easy. But we have to do that, otherwise pandemic will come again and pandemic will unite us.
The pandemic will unite us, indeed.
Yeah.
On those levels, yes. On other levels, no.
No, the pandemic is not the best thing that has to happen again, no. But it's still continuing. So we have to be like intentional about knowing other people before judging them.
100%.
Yeah, and then you discover that there's less things that we're common. We eat, we do everything the same way. It's just our attitude about other people and what we hear. So if you explore that, make a friend. Don't have to make 20 friends. One friend can lead you to make other friends. Then we could be a good community.
Absolutely. Do you have websites for the two organizations? Yeah,
right now we have one website, and it's for the Immigrant and Refugee Resource Village of Albuquerque, but Women's Global Pathways is in that. You can learn about that in that website.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I put those somewhere in the video description. But
so we always call IRRVA, we call it IRRVA, the Immigrant and Refugee Resource Village of Albuquerque, it's a fiscal agent for New Mexico Women's Global Pathways.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but if you go online, you'll find a lot of things about Women's Global Nkazi. You just Google my name, Nkazi Sinandile, or my husband. You will learn everything that you want to learn about our organization.
Sinandile. I love that. That's such a beautiful name.
Yeah, thank you.
Nkazi, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.